Welcome back to Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. The episode today is going to kick off a series on trauma bond. I'm going to take my time and hopefully bring guests on that will discuss with you the importance of understanding trauma bonds and how you can heal from them and sometimes disconnect as needed if all parties aren't on a journey to healing. So I want to invite you into this space where we tell the truth, especially the truths that we have been trying to hide, trained to hide. Buckle up. We're diving into this trauma bonds about relationships and the deep soul work of healing. If you've ever asked yourself, why do I keep going back? Or why does love hurt like this? This episode is for you. Let's go ahead and get into it. So, in this first segment, I'm going to break down what is a trauma bond, leave you with some words of affirmations and some strategies to help you to identify where you're going next. A trauma bond is a psychological response that occurs when we form emotional attachments with someone who is causing us harm. It's not just toxic relationships, it's the cycle of abuse, followed by moments of kindness or love that create confusion and dependence. It often starts in childhood. If you were raised in an environment where love came with pain, unpredictability, or control, your brain may have learned that chaos is a connection. So when you're an adult, and someone disrespects you, manipulates you, or harms you, and then apologizes or showers you with love or tells you you're the only one who understands them, your nervous system can confuse the inconsistency for intimacy. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're trauma bonded. When you consider trauma bonds, I want you to think about what it's like to be handcuffed in a situation that you're misunderstood by. A place where there are links to be broken, but you're afraid to break them because you fear that it's going to create more trouble in your life. That bond that's keeping you connected to toxicity has to begin getting pulled away from a space where you are able to breathe and move into a place of freedom of your own thoughts. The connection with trauma bond often starts in childhood. It often starts with trying to be enough for your parents, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be understood, but always feel like you're missing the mark on all of those things. So, in the midst of it, however your family responds to you, it creates this first link of trauma. You then become bonded to that level of trauma by appreciating the chaos, because in the chaos, it shows you attention, it shows you value, it shows you connectivity, it shows you a false sense of love and a false sense of hope. Oftentimes, people who are people pleasers are grounded in places of being trauma bonded to situations or circumstances and responses because that's all they know. They don't know anything differently than those bonds that have given them approval over time because approval is what they sought. Oftentimes, when individuals find themselves ready to release a bond, they become angry and they begin to be targeted by those that have created toxic situations, saying things like, you're too sensitive, or you take everything too seriously, or you know I'm just playing with you. Why you got to act like that? And then it confuses the mindset thinking, what in the world is going on? Does this person really love me? Does this person really accept who I am? Are they able to really see me? Okay, let me give them another chance. Let me open the door again. Let me accept them, because the second part is their fear of rejection and abandonment. I know that it doesn't always feel good to me, but there are times that my mama makes me feel good, or my siblings, or my significant other makes me feel good. So why would I walk away from those times? Because those times are the things that's keeping you hooked into your anger, your irritability, your low self value and self worth, your inconsistency with what you want versus what you accept. Let's talk about that for a moment. When you think about what you want in a relationship, it's so important for you to begin to set a standard in the relationship with yourself first. If you are constantly lying to yourself, degrading and demeaning yourself, ignoring your intuition, the bond inside of you continues to grow towards a base of trauma. Then you can't trust you with your own emotions. You can't be present for you and expect you to protect you from you. At that moment where you're lying, where you're demeaning, where you're second guessing yourself or talking down to yourself, you've become your own enemy. I remember years ago reading a book by Bishop T.D. Jakes that said the enemy is the inner me. Oftentimes we think that the enemy dwells on the outside, when in fact the enemy is within us, because we are trapped in our trauma. We're trapped in that bond that keeps us connected to chaos. Our external self may want freedom. We may look at other people's relationships and situations and say, I want something like that. And then we may look back on our own and accept the abuse and tell ourselves that it's okay for us to accept this kind of abuse. Well, I'm here to tell you that bond first has to be broken with inside of you. Too many times we are looking for other people to understand our trauma, to help become the hero in our lives because of the trauma, that we connect with them hoping that they become the savior in our life. Here's a news flash. You're the only hero that's coming to save you. You're the only one that's going to show up for you, dig deep into the work of healing to release those traumas, to release those bonds, to release those connections so that you can begin to breathe in the freedom of living an authentic life. Now, I will tell you that as you begin to loosen those bonds of trauma and toxicity, chaos, and indifference from your life, you're going to lose people. It's inevitable. There's no way from that. There's no way around that, because the truth is this: people are able to manipulate you easy when you are trauma bonded. Your trauma bond could be, I need people to be present in my life, to want me, to make me feel like I'm valuable. Their trauma bond may be low self esteem and insecurity, and they need to show up as somebody's hero. So those two bonds meet and they connect. And for a short time, you both are getting what you believe you need in order to be healthy. And then the chaos starts. The one moment that you ask to be seen, you ask to be respected, is the moment that that hero complex can shatter, resulting in the coming forth of that person's bond. Another trauma bonded situation could be latching on to relationships because you're missing parts of things like a maternal connection with your mother or with your siblings. So you become attached to situations and circumstances because they see you and they make you feel good. But in that attachment, the moment that you are able to be manipulated and you share with them, our relationship is unreciprocated. They then remove themselves, bringing your fears to life that I'm not valued and I'm not worthy. And so the cycle continues. So you're out there, you're searching for the next person to fill that void when the truth is the void filler is you. You're the one that's going to have to put in the work to identify exactly where you are in this space of trauma, in this space of the bond, asking yourself, what's the glue? What is the glue that keeps me connected to this trauma? That means you're going to have to do some trauma digging. What exactly is trauma digging? Going to the root cause of what has brought you to this place of connection, this place that you're holding on to, and you're holding on to it with hope that things will change. And they can. But they can't change when you are handcuffed to trauma. The change occurs when you get real with yourself. When you begin to say to yourself, wait a minute, the love that I'm looking for, this person is unable to give it to me until I give it to myself first. I often hear people discuss how they've sacrificed everything for everybody but themselves, and they're unhappy and they're miserable and they're filled with anxiety, filled with depressions, oftentimes wrestling with thoughts of suicide. And it's all because they are looking externally for something that has to take place internally. That internal process is going to be painful in the beginning. Why am I telling you that? Because I don't want to give you any false hope that this is going to be an overnight success, that you're just going to blink and all of your connections to trauma and all those bonds have dissipated and you can just begin to live. No, you're literally going to have to work it out. I typically encourage clients to start by writing. I recall in a session that I asked a client to close their eyes and go back to their first place of trauma. And I gave them a few minutes to do that. And I began to ask them to describe what they see in that space of trauma. And I wanted to hear things about colors that they see, the position that they were in, whether they were hiding from, hearing an argument or any level of abuse or hiding from someone that may have been abusing them. I wanted to hear it all. I wanted them to tap into that first place. That is the place where healing has to begin. When you are working through your trauma bonds and your connections, you have to be willing to revisit that pain temporarily so that you can open the door for the healing. What I found as a therapist is most people don't like to visit the pain. They don't like to remember the situations. Here's the thing. When you refuse to remember the situations, when you refuse to heal from the situations, the signs and symptoms show up in your right now relationships. And you're trying to figure out, well, why am I acting or responding like this? Why am I treating myself like that? It ruminates, it shows up, it's attached to your nervous system, it's attached to your behavioral responses because you haven't been true to yourself. You haven't honored you in the process of being able to say, here's where I am, here's what I know, and here's what I understand. And so, as you begin to work through those trauma bonds, you want to begin to answer, how can I show up as the hero in my life? Well, let's define hero. Hero is someone that comes in and removes you from danger or removes you from toxicity. Well, how can you expect someone externally to come in and show up as a hero when they don't know your story? They don't truly know your pain. You may have mentioned things like, my mom and I don't have the best relationship, so I don't often talk to her. My mom yelled at me a lot. My mom made me feel devalued and things of that nature. But that's just surface. That's not all of your truth. And so you're expecting them to come and open a door on your truth when you haven't opened the door on your truth yourself. Why is that? Why would you want someone else to come in and have authority over you as your hero when you're intended to be the hero in your life? Healing from trauma begins first with the visitation to the pain that you experienced. The next level is reframing and rewriting the situation so that you are not engrossed in that pain anymore. And then affirming your new narrative. That is not to say that someone is telling you your story didn't exist or that your story is a lie. That is to say that you're changing the narrative on the impact of that story in the way that you remember it in order to loosen the chains of trauma. Being able to put yourself in a position to loosen those chains is going to be the most empowering part of your healing. See, your power is within you. So I want you to think about it. And I wish I had uh, my chains that I use for one of the conferences on breakthrough and breaking those bonds of trauma so that you can get to healing, because I really would love to show you how easy it is when you begin to do the work to break those chains, to break that trauma bond, to disconnect from it. I hear a lot of people discussing and being encouraged to just walk away from relationships. That's fine and good if that's your end result. But if you're walking away from relationships without healing the trauma, that means one or two things are going to happen. You're going to remain in an angered, irritable state because the trauma hasn't been released out of your body, or you're going to connect with other people and you're going to bleed your trauma on them, subsequently leaving them to make a decision to abandon and reject you or to add on to your toxicity. The truth is, you can't avoid the healing if that is what you want to experience. You can't avoid breaking those bonds and breaking away from the trauma. If you want to live a life within peace, if you want to regulate your nervous system, if you want to put yourself back in a space where you can feel the healing that you desire. See, when you go through healing, when you disconnect those bonds, your real reality is this: your nervous system begins to regulate. Your sleep patterns regulate. Your gastrointestinal issues begin to regulate. Your blood pressure can come down. You can stave off diabetes and heart disease because going through your healing for trauma will help you to regulate your nervous system as it reconnects to the healthy sides of you. Staying in dysregulated, toxic, trauma bonded situation will make you sick physically, mentally, and spiritually. You will be sick. Is that really how you want to live your life? Is that really how you want to leave the legacy of who you are? The person remembered to be angry, the person that seems to be unlovable, the person that seems to never forgive and never forget. So let's talk about how forgiveness or unforgiveness attaches itself to your trauma. Unforgiveness is a link in the chain that keeps you connected to your toxicity. A lot of people have this idea that once they've gone through trauma, they don't need to forgive the person. Okay. But every day, and I want you to imagine this, that every day that you wake up angry, every day that you wake up frustrated, every day that you wake up feeling disconnected, that person that induced trauma on you is with you. You may not call the person by name, you may not call the situation by experience, but the energy of that trauma is still with you. So, literally, you're carrying that person on your back in every corner of your life. I want you to take a moment and think about that. I want you to envision yourself walking, carrying this person with all of their body weight in every area that you go to in your life because you're still connected to that trauma. No one is asking you to forget that the trauma occurred. The forgiveness that you extend, it really isn't about them. It's about you releasing that connection. So if you repeat this affirmation, my hopes is that you begin to feel the release and the freedom when letting go of the trauma. I choose to forgive because I couldn't control the toxic situation that happened to me. I choose to forgive and let go of the connection to that toxic situation. I choose to align myself with healing from that toxic situation. So I forgive you and I let you go. Take that deep breath in and then release it. I choose to let you go. That is the empowerment that you get back when you choose to forgive, releasing the first level of the toxic bond. When you wiggle your shoulders, do you feel that level of freedom of letting that person, the situation, and that connection off the hook? Now, don't get confused and think that's all you have to do. There's still work that has to actually happen to dig the root of that trauma up. But that first step of forgiveness gives you the permission to use all the tools to dig up the toxic situations that you have experienced and the trauma associated with you. I want you to listen to this episode over and over again as you begin to prepare to release yourself from the toxic connections of trauma. You deserve to give yourself the opportunity to love you naturally, to accept and honor you naturally, to stop being the enemy within so that you can be your best self. In order to help you to redirect that internal struggle, I want you to begin to think about, what do I need from me in order to begin the work after forgiveness to release these bonds of toxicity, to release these bonds of trauma. I want you to consider what those things look like. I want you to give yourself permission to move forward in your healing. In order for healing to begin, it has to start with the commitment, then the consistency of the commitment, then the work. You've got to be willing to be consistent, committed, and doing the work after you've given yourself permission to go through this process. So I hope that this first segment of Trauma Bond and understanding what a trauma bond is and the few examples that I provided help you begin the process of journeying through your healing, because you deserve to heal. Until the next episode of Authentically Peculiar with Marcia, tap back into where your trauma began, journal it, talk to your younger self, talk to that traumatized self, and ask yourself, what do I need in this moment to begin healing? And I'll see you on the next episode of Authentically Peculiar with Marcia. Take good care, stay focused, stay committed, and stay authentically peculiar.